Welcome to Healthcare Algorhythm. I'm Dr. Will Strimel. If you want the real story behind today's healthcare challenges and the strategies and technologies people are actually using to solve them, you're in the right place. Short conversations, clear insights, practical takeaways. Let's get into it.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome today to what is a different kind of episode. Usually on this show, we focus on the intersection between care delivery, healthcare operations, and technology. But today we're going to take a step back to something a little bit more fundamental, but something very innovative. And that is so often when we approach human suffering, we focus on the latest drug or device or procedure. But what if the first step in treatment and healing was actually the realization that you weren't sick at all, that you're only human, and that you already had the keys to your treatment within you? Well, to explore that today, I'm joined by Dr. Fred Moss. Dr. Fred is a psychiatrist, thought leader, and founder of the Welcome to Humanity movement. He is pioneering an approach to mental health that is truly revolutionary because it takes us back to a time before the explosion of psychiatric medications to when the approach to psychological strength and resiliency was much more holistic. And he has a wealth of experience and insights that I think are going to surprise a lot of you today. So, Dr. Fred, it is a sincere pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really look forward to our conversation. Let's get this going and see what kind of difference we can make.
Absolutely. So in reviewing your work, it's very clear to me that have been challenging a lot of the entrenched beliefs that exist when it comes to approaching the person who is struggling with their mental health. But I want you to start with, what was the epiphany? When did you realize the system is just not working?
Oh, it's before I got to the system. I never thought the
Okay.
system was working. I went into psychiatry because I despised the direction that it was going in without me. I had, really always been a big fan and very enchanted with the whole idea of communication ever since I was a little baby. I was born to a family with two brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me. And I used to watch the four of them talk to each other from my playpen in the living room and just wish that someday maybe I could actually learn how to communicate as well. And I thought that would happen in school. I mean, what else would they teach you in school? I knew that it was the most important thing that we were doing. What else could be more important? And instead, when I got to school, just like you and most of us in the Western world, I learned that open discourse isn't what was welcome at all. And what was really being called for was to sit down, be quiet, and copy exactly what the teacher says to do. And if you do that very well, then we'll pass you with honors to the next grade. And that's all it was. It was discouraging open discourse, in fact. And so I figured, well, where did these people learn how to communicate? It must be in the higher grades. So I went to junior high expecting to finally learn. And no, it got worse in junior high. And then I went to high school and it got even worse there. And so I decided I'd give it one last chance and try college. And the college that was closest to me, well, I really just loved their helmets, to be honest. And I had known a little bit. And that was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I went to University of Michigan. And I was there for like a year and a half in the engineering school. And that wasn't going to be a place where I learned how to communicate. Now, Ann Arbor, yes. University of Michigan, no. Like in the streets of Ann Arbor, I could learn how to communicate. And I love that. I love being in the streets of Ann Arbor. But eventually I dropped out. It cost a lot of money to work, that cost, a lot of time and
An
a lot of money
expensive
went
lesson,
to
right?
being an expensive lesson over there in Ann Arbor. And I got on a bus and I took a bus all the way to Berkeley, California to figure out what my life was about. And a Greyhound bus for several days. I had a great summer there and I did figure out a lot of things, but it was not sustainable. And then my family, my brothers and parents, they convinced me that there was this new industry out there that I had the aptitude for. You may have heard of the industry. It was called computers. And I was like, yeah, I might be able to do that. Fortran, COBOL, a little bit of math, a little bit of batch jobs and punch cards. And that's what I did until I realized, there was only one working computer in all of Michigan at the time. So back to Michigan I went, back to Ann Arbor I went, and, I sat most every day inside of that computer room, the computer building, I should say, with one big computer.
Right. Right.
And, that didn't work either. I was like, nah, I'm not doing this the rest of my life. That's crazy. So I quit again. And this time I was promising never to go back to school ever again. And it was like, I'm done with this nonsense. my mom, got me an application for, she said, well, I have to get a job. And I understand that. She's my mom. And so she got me some applications, including a civil service job at the state mental health facility for adolescent boys in Pontiac. And I started on, January 5th, 1980, in that field. I thought I'd only last for 3 weeks, but because that's how long orientation was. And I just
Okay.
wanted 3 paychecks. I'd go buy a car and then drive around the country and figure out what my life was about. But on that fourth week, my friend Paul, who later became a very good friend, convinced me to go up to Meadowview 5 to be with the kids. And so I went up, kind of trepidatious. And I realized that this was going to be the first place where I could actually communicate effectively and make a difference with other people by connecting with them and seeing them as humans, and indeed get paid for it while I was getting better at it. And I would heal too. It's like, okay, I can maybe do this. And so I did it for several years. And the only thing I really didn't like about that job, I mean, I really liked the job a lot. I liked the afternoon shift. I liked the kids. I liked, my position. The thing I didn't like was the future of psychiatry. And, psychiatry was headed in a direction that I wasn't aligned with. It was already becoming very constrictive,
What?
very restrictive. And I saw that, and I saw that communication was dying in the psychiatric field. So I made it my business to actually be a hero. The idea was that I would go into psychiatry representing and being an ambassador for the preservation of communication as the heart of all healing. So I went back to school a third time, despite promising never to do that. And this time I finished my undergraduate degree, got accepted at a great college in Chicago, Illinois, Northwestern University Medical School, and spent 4 years there, and then did a residency in Cincinnati and then a fellowship. And all of a sudden I'm spat out and I'm
You
a
you went
psychiatrist,
you went from never going back to school to going for the whole enchilada, huh?
to going through the whole thing. Exactly. And, yeah, that's exactly how it went, and so I was not sold even when I was done. It
Really?
wasn't like I believed what I heard. I knew that medicines or diagnoses or pathologizing humanity is essentially what it wasn't in line with how I knew the world to be. But I, spent a lot of time sort of bobbing and weaving and doing what I could to fill the needs of the requirements, and all the while trying to soak in communication as the heart of all healing. But it was a duplicitous life for a couple decades, actually, taking jobs that were primarily psychiatric. And when asked to do what they would ask me to do, it wasn't about communication. So I'd have to kind of work overtime to communicate effectively with my client. Over the years, 2006 was a big year. There was a lot of epiphanies that year. And then I eventually decided that I can't live duplicitously anymore, because really the only thing that matters is communication and connection. So I began to really create a brand or a way of being that was based on connection, based on human connection, on, harmonic resonance with other humans, connecting authentically, connecting genuinely, connecting from our core, from our true and honest, curious self. And this, obviously I had much better results than anything that the primary system ever taught me, because the primary system isn't built to heal. The primary system is built to perpetuate itself. And
Yeah,
that's really the
to
case. I mean,
exist.
if there's been jobs where my productivity was measured by how many people I could get to come back and see me.
Yeah, for sure, that's still a
But I
large
didn't
part of the
want people
medical
to.
industry, right?
Exactly. I didn't want that. I wanted to work myself out of a job, to give people the tools that they needed so that they no longer needed to come see me again. Like the Maytag repairman, you might recall,
Yeah,
like
now
working myself out of a job.
the word you keep
Go
coming
ahead.
back to is communication, and, yeah, we could spend a long time talking about that, but I guess I would ask you, since this is something you think about a lot, this is your craft, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for humans to communicate with one another? Because I think the inference is that if we learn to communicate better, and maybe even some of that is with ourselves, but if we learn to be better communicators, then that would unlock a lot of the opportunities to heal and to get better and to be resilient.
Well, that's a tough question, and it's answered with a four-letter word starting with F. And that word is fear.
Yeah, okay.
We're really
Yeah.
afraid. We're really afraid to disrupt. We're afraid to be disconnected. We're afraid to be thrown off the island. We're afraid to be dismissed. We're afraid to be, detached. We're just afraid. And, we've learned over time to become somebody that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. Now, if you're going to walk around the world being someone that you're not going to be able to communicate very effectively because it's not you who's showing up.
Not authentic.
So what we really end up doing is, inauthentic, exactly. And so, so much of my work is about bringing people back to their authentic self, because once you get there, like a tuning fork, you start being able to communicate and resonate with other humans who are also at the same frequency, called human being. And when we do communicate, we get this relief. We don't have to, when we're being honest with ourselves, when we're being genuine, and when we're being authentic, when we're really caring, when we're forgiving and accepting and compassionate of all human beings, that's the goal here, is be accepting even of those people, even of that guy, even of her over there, even of that group that believes that. Like, can you actually just get that they are them, you are you, and in the process of communicating, natural healing bursts forward? That's just clear to me. It's not like a diagnosed pathologizing anxiety. We talked right before the show about these 4 adult children that you have. And, we think that anxiety is something wrong with us. Well, maybe anxiety doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Maybe anxiety is the proper response to an anxiety-provoking society.
Sure.
Is the life that we're living at this point. And if you're not anxious, all you're really doing is putting a wet blanket on the areas of life where, if you would let yourself be, you would be anxious too.
Yeah,
and it's
right.
only
There's
human
nothing wrong with feeling the feels, as they say, right? Like, we have to embrace
nothing
them.
wrong. Nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with being anxious. Nothing wrong with being afraid. Nothing wrong with being depressed. Nothing wrong with feeling awkward. Nothing wrong with being distracted. Nothing. We don't blame a log for burning in a fire. So we live in a fire. It's really okay to be uncomfortable. And not only okay, it's essentially normal.
Yeah.
There has never been a society where comfort was expectable.
But then why are we getting worse at that as time goes by?
Because of the reason that we're getting worse is because it's a paradigm. It's a prevailing paradigm, a prevailing narrative, the prevailing context, the prevailing conversation is that person over there is frightening, or that person over there I can't trust. And so we become worse at communicating because we're no longer communicating. Even this, what you and I are doing, although we're utilizing some very heavy duty technology here, because neither of us have ever met, including today. We haven't met yet. We're both staring at a flat screen. That's all we're doing. And we're handling electronic facsimiles of who each other is. I'm not really seeing you. I'm seeing pixelated lights that are falling in and out of focus. I'm not even really hearing you. I'm hearing your voice is not what's coming over. It's a made-up version of your voice that's coming over. So I'm truly not meeting you. There's so many barriers into meeting you. However, this works pretty well. Given all the constraints that are out there in the world, this is a remarkable technology that has us at least convinced that we're getting connected together here. But the reason that we're getting worse is that we're allowed to. We'll say the standard, or the average, or there's another word, sort of the expectable communication level has gone down. So we're no longer able or interested, because of the fear of getting hurt, and because we have become dependent on skipping the area of what it really means to be with a human. There are some risks to take when you're with another human, right?
Absolutely.
There's risks you might, and so we can mitigate those risks if we use these sideways alternatives that have been available to us with our thumbs, or with talking into a screen, or letting AI write our emails, or letting, just creating videos or creating pictures of our very best meals and pretending that that's our life, or the women that we're with, or the friends that we're at, or the places that we travel. These are all just facsimiles. They're kind of like improper representations of what life is really about. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing people sort of make up who they think they want to look like when they come to fresh air. Like, when you post yourself on social media, which is our dominant form of communicating for sure in the Western world these days, what you're going to make sure that you pose properly, you're dressed properly, you have the right background, you're with the right people, you have the right smile, or you have the right, whatever expression you're trying to make. If you want to be yourself unhappy, you'll make sure you look properly unhappy. And It's all just, there's all rehearsed. So spontaneous conversations are no longer what we're really after. Now,
So
when we
you
get
must have
smart,
observed though that people have been craving something different than this, right? Because it's one thing to have the observation, it's another thing to see an opportunity to say, hey, not only this isn't right, this isn't working, this isn't what people need, but the belief and if some to just to put it in a way like to see like the market opportunity, so to speak, for this type of revolutionary thinking. And it led you to come up with this concept of being the undoctor, or, maybe you can explain as you went, okay, I'm going to practice this way. I'm going to undoctor. What does that mean?
so I'm not the one who gave me the name Undoctor, but
Okay.
in 2006, especially, that was the year that things I mentioned earlier, a year some things
Hmm.
turned around. I had an opportunity to really change my ways. I had had enough of living the duplicitous clinical life, and I
Hmm.
decided that I could no longer support living the side that I think doesn't work. So I had about several thousand patients were as of my own in that year, and I took a good handful of them off their diagnosis and then off their medications, only to learn that they got better, reliably and profoundly better almost all the time.
What gave you the
So
courage to
then I
do that
learned,
there? That's a big step,
what's
right?
that?
I mean, what gave you the courage to do that? Or what allowed you to say, hey,
Because it
listen.
was the right thing to do. Because people were getting worse on medicine, and if I just opened my eyes, I could see that. People were getting worse when they would typecast themselves with a pathological diagnosis. They were just saying things like, "I have ADD," or "I have PTSD," or "I have BAD," or "I have, whatever, schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia," and that would actually, corner them. That would typecast them into a corner. It would limit who they then got to be. They were relinquishing responsibility for the areas of life that they felt clumsy about. And so they
Okay.
were taking these diagnoses, and then they were taking medications that were clearly making them worse. And they would come in and they would say, "I'm better," but then they'd be shaking and they couldn't smile and they were shuffling, but they'd say, "Yeah, I'm good, doc. I'm good." And most docs would just write, like, "No changes, patient okay, come back in 1 week or 3 weeks or 6 months or whatever." That isn't the way it was. I knew that people could get better once they were listened to, once they were heard, once that they were gotten. And so it wasn't that hard to at least give it an idea what would happen if we took these people off medicine. Medicines were making them worse. And I already knew that if I took them off and all they did was stay the same, that would be better than what was happening. But instead, I learned, of course, that they actually got way better, and usually their whole diagnosis disappeared. Now, this was really an important finding because it suggests that diagnosis and medications actually make you worse. They actually perpetuate the conditions they're marketed to treat. Now, when I started learning that, which makes a lot of sense, by the way, that is how the business model is designed. It's not nefarious. I wish I would have designed it. I'd be living in the hills somewhere. I did not design it, but it was a beautiful design. And it remains today that when you take these medicines, you actually get progressively worse. They actually open you up to the symptoms of the disease you thought you had. And in fact, that's what happens regularly inside of the psychiatric system. So instead of yanking the chain of the psychiatric system, I already knew the one thing I told you because I learned that as a in the playpen with my two brothers and my parents. And that was the most powerful intervention that I could possibly ever come up with. And there will never be a comparison is communication. I don't have anything that even comes, no Seroquel, no Ativan, no Prozac is going to rival the impact of what happens when someone feels gotten.
And
And
so
so
what
it
did
was
that
like,
look
let's
like
move.
then? You know what? We're putting the medicines aside. We're gonna, quote unquote, communicate. Give
That's
me
right.
a glimpse into that.
Not quote unquote.
Well,
We're
what
going
is
to
that?
do
Yeah.
it.
So what does it look
We're
like?
going to It looks like letting people realize that there was nothing wrong with them in the first place. Now, this is a very important piece if you start realizing that being uncomfortable is part of being human. And because if you don't get to that piece and you
Hmm.
just take away the medicine, then people will still think there's something wrong with them and wonder what they should replace the medicine with because they got something that still needs to be fixed. But once we start really backing up, maybe going a little bit further and start thinking, oh, this discomfort that I'm having, even if it's profound, is an integral part of what it means to be living inside the human condition. Once we get to that, now people start remembering that they don't need to fix themselves. That isn't part of the plan because they're not broken in the first place. And if they're not broken in the first place, they don't have to go to a doctor to get themselves fixed. And they don't have to go to a pharmacy with a piece of paper that says, take some toxic medicines and let's see if it helps you. All of a sudden, they can start embracing discomfort as being an unfortunate but real part of life. Look, I am not diminishing the pain that's involved in the discomfort of human condition. I'm not saying that it's less painful, like get over it. I'm just saying that it's not pathological. It's just part of what we all know, and we can relate to each other if we allow ourselves to.
This may be a little, somewhat provocative, but do you find that some people actually take comfort in having the diagnosis?
More than some people, almost everyone.
Really?
Yeah, they start, that wasn't me, that was my ADHD. That wasn't me, that was my bipolar disorder. Honey, I'm sorry I screamed at you, I have PTSD. Honey, I'm sorry I can't watch you, I'm on the spectrum. I know I'm anxious. I know I'm distractible. I know I have premonitions that I'll call voices. I know I have a condition. We relinquish myself and give the things that aren't working off to the condition, to the alphabet soup-based acronym of a condition. Now, when we start doing that and we take on the really bold courage to consider that massive discomfort, some of which I have felt even in the last half of day. Like last night, I had a highly uncomfortable night. Highly uncomfortable. It was really, I don't want to speak to the details. That's not the importance. The idea was it was highly uncomfortable. And in that process, there's even was a consideration. I wonder if there's something wrong with me. Now, what if we really got to the point where we realized is that we don't even know what normal is. So how did we get the audacity to start calling people abnormal? Compared to what?
Right.
We don't even have a definition.
It's more just like, sort of that's what most people may do or say or have. That doesn't mean that it's
so that's the prevailing conversation. But the prevailing conversation does not necessarily define reality. It just defines a prevailing conversation. So there is an embedded way of thinking that when you're uncomfortable, when you're sad, when you're nervous, when you're distracted, when you're angry, when you're impulsive, when you're awkward, when you're unable to complete tasks or unwilling to complete or not completing tasks or any of that things, that must mean there's something wrong with you. And what happens is this: you go to a doctor, you get your diagnosis, now you get a treatment that actually forms the symptoms you thought the drug was marketed to treat. Now you have the condition. The first time that you have a chemical dependency is after you take the drug.
Yeah. So, you talking about that concept of normal, that kind of makes me think a little bit about the fact that we are getting really, really good in healthcare, medicine, at measuring things, at quantifying things. And, this definitely brings in the concept of technology. I mean, I'm a cardiologist and I could go on and on about what's called the high sensitivity troponin that can detect the littlest injury or insult to the heart muscle cells, and it drives a lot of healthcare, a story for another day. My question is that, are there, in terms of mental health or, the human condition, are there things that we can measure, or should we? Should we even measure?
First of all, there isn't. There really isn't. Because there's no normal.
Yeah.
There's no.
So how do you start from scratch with somebody? You know what I mean? Like, how do you set the table then?
I set the table by letting them know, asking them really straight up, are you willing to consider the possibility that there's nothing wrong with you?
Wow.
That's really important.
And what kind of responses do you get? What was the toughest response you got, and how'd you overcome it? Kind of.
No. The regular response is, that's a really hard one for me, doc. I don't know, because people are pretty sure there's something wrong with them. In fact, unlike your subspecialty, psychiatry might be the only subspecialty in all of clinical medicine that if you tell somebody that they're okay, they get pissed.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, they love it when I tell them they're okay. That's for sure.
Exactly. They do, for sure. Not in my field. If I tell them they're okay, they're like, why did I come see you? Wow. They come in already preloaded with the idea that they have something wrong with them. They just want to know what it is. They're not willing to hear many people. Not some people are, but they're generally not willing to hear that really what you're experiencing here is the human condition. Dr. Strimel, I have your diagnosis all figured out already, by the way, halfway through this conversation.
Okay. Good.
Are you
I
ready?
mean,
Yeah, you got
I'm
to
sure there's
gear
a
up.
lot of people in my life that are listening right now and want to hear it.
All right, here it is. Ready? You
Yep.
have one condition and one condition only.
Okay, good.
It's called William Strimel.
Okay,
That's what you
I hear
have.
it.
That's what you have.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
got
That's the only one I confirm, and that's the only one you're tested for, and that's the only one that matters, and that's the only one that separates you from other people. That's it. And whenever you forget it, just look at your driver's license.
sure.
You have that condition, and you have another collective condition as well. It's not true diagnosis, and that's called the human condition. And inside that human condition, you get a smorgasbord, a potpourri of so many different experiences, some of them comfortable, some of them painful, some of them anxiety producing, some of them, wonderful, some of them miraculous, some of them heinous, some of them barbaric, some of them like awkward. That's all part of the human experience.
How long does
When
it
we
kind
can
of take you to get someone to really start to wrap their head around, in general, obviously everyone's different, of course, but
to really do what?
to wrap their head around, hey, Dr. Fred might be onto something here. Because you're going to have, I would imagine these folks have to let a lot go to begin to accept that possibility.
No,
Really?
I think it happens in the first meeting. Yeah, I at least get the jar loosened in the first meeting for sure. Yeah, all the time because I'm right. That's why.
Okay, well, that help. That does help, I will say.
That does help, right? I'm just saying something they already hoped for. And
Yeah.
look, people get afraid because if you're responsible for the stuff that you're clumsy about, now you're actually responsible for them. So next time you yell at your wife, or next time you don't turn something in on time, or next time you're scared, or the next time you're depressed, or the next time you're hopeless, you have one place to look. You no longer have like the specter of a condition that came and ate up your psychiatric cells. That didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's all part of life. Life comes with a massive amount of discomfort, along with the beauty and wonder, by the way, not just discomfort.
Exactly.
I have designed something called the Moss method. I've compiled 20 things, tools and practices, meditation, gratitude, nutrition, hydration, creativity, nature, pets, writing, reading, spirituality, being of service. When we start doing these things, we start becoming capable of separating ourselves from our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, and our sensations. And we start seeing that we are the carrier of those things, but we're not any one of them in any particular moment. Now, we've got to do those practices. If we just think about those things, that doesn't really work very well. Thinking is kind of the booby trap here. We think our thinking is really important. We think our thinking is what creates reality. Our thinking isn't what creates reality, it's just a tool that we've been given that we lean on too hard. But when we can start separating ourselves from the thoughts, from the feelings, from the sensations, from the emotion, then we can start realizing that we're the carrier of the entire human experience. And sometimes we're going to think there's something wrong with us. In fact, one could make a case that it's pathognomonic for being human to think that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because
Why is that?
I can see your point. Your point is that it then in some way alleviates whether it's responsibility or blame or fear. It
Accountability.
puts it on the accountability, puts it somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
And that's a little bit easier.
You know what? If I could give somebody else responsibility for the bullshit I went over last night, I would do that in a second.
Yeah.
If I could blame what happened last night on some 4-letter acronym, I would do it in a second. However, that's not being honest. I'm responsible for what happened last night with me, or anytime in this morning now with you. I'm responsible. That doesn't mean that I'm to blame. It doesn't mean that I should be shameful or guilty. It just means that I'm responsible for how my life turns out.
Well, in some way, it's empowering at the same time then, right?
Dude, it's like so empowering that it's intimidating. Exactly. Yeah. It's so empowering. It means that you're responsible for all of your flat tires. You're responsible for all the scratches. You're responsible for all the damage that you do to yourself and to others. And you're responsible for the people that you love. You're responsible for the things in your life that matter to you. You're responsible for the things in your life that don't matter to you. It's okay. But I'm not saying anything that's not universally human. That's why I always laugh when people use the word revolutionary to talk about me. It's like, dude.
Well, right. because it's believing. I think it is revolutionary to put the belief back in ourselves, right? And to
Exactly.
not rely on all of these light, flashing lights and shiny toys and cool gadgets and whatnot to sort of find our peace within them. That, we have the ability. And you mentioned how we were talking about. I have 4 young adult children who are great, and they're doing fantastic. But I think when I look back and I look at their generation, right, it's really concerning about the degree of anxiety, depression. We constantly see this in the mental health. They're young. That's the young adults. It's got to start way before that. So I wonder if you might just have a thought or two for, say, parents or people who have children, or adolescents in their life, because that's probably where a lot of this gets formed. What are the tools to kind of embed
Well,
this
one of
thinking
the
when they're young?
yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with anxiety and depression. How about if you first start there, and what your kids are really asking you to do is listen to them, relate to them, understand them, communicate with them, and connect with them. That's the answer. So when you start worrying about their anxiety, you're treating it as if it's a pathology.
Yeah, you're
Like
already
somehow they got
medicalizing
something,
it.
that they need in. Yeah, you're already medicalizing. Good point. Exactly. So I'm telling you, it's not the anxiety or the depression that's concerning. It's the world that's helping create that. And it's okay because that's the world we live in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Just, kind of bringing it full circle here. You are still a practicing clinician, right? You work in a system. You're doing something outside of the traditional system, but you're still part of the system. So if you could go back and if you could wipe the slate clean and reconstruct the way mental health is delivered, just even on a one-to-one basis. I'm not talking about hospitals or things like that, but if you could all of a sudden teach everyone who was going to be the mental health practitioner of the future, where would you start? What would how would
Nothing's
you? What would,
wrong. Maybe there's nothing wrong with them. Just go out there lateral. You don't have anything to give to anybody. You didn't learn anything in those 8 years of school that taught you how to communicate to people better. I promise. When you were sitting in those chairs, actually trying to figure out pathological and then, origins and inserts and all that stuff. Like, seriously, that didn't help you become a better person. It really didn't. Find somebody who you can relate to. If you're feeling uncomfortable, go out there in your inner circle and relate to them. When I meet my clients, I do what I can to eliminate the power gradient that sits between patient and doctor.
okay.
Instead, we are 2 humans stumbling, bumbling, and tumbling through life without a recipe book and without an instruction manual. And therefore, I can actually relate to people that are losing their shit. Totally can. Totally.
Yeah,
So
we
can
all have.
you. We don't have to pretend. We don't have to pretend. I see you're losing your shit. So I, as a top line clinician or something, am going to give you a 4-letter diagnosis and give you a medicine that's going to make you worse. Fortunately, you're losing your shit because I'm not losing my shit. And therefore I have the extra added bonus of being normal, even though it's never been defined by anyone ever. Like, we start looking at the serious deception that's involved in the whole world. Even, by the way, you probably didn't notice it, but mental health and mental illness are synonyms of each other. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, we
Right.
talk about, like, he's got mental health
Mental,
problems.
they both have a pejorative sense to them, right?
They really do, but one
Yeah.
of them is called healthy.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Wow. So where can people learn more about the Moss method?
Yeah, the Moss method shows up in a few different places. The Undoctor Reset is a retreat I have coming around the corner here, and so I'm looking to help people. I'm looking to help people who spend their lives restoring people, like you. People who spend lives restoring people, help them restore themselves as they're restoring others, because we often live inside of a deficit. We give so much of our
Huge
heart
need
and
for
soul.
that.
That's how they built us up. We give so much of everything to our clients, to our family, to our wives, to our lives. And we forget to give ourselves enough so that we have stuff to give. Because you can't give something that's been depleted out of your own system. You no longer can give it. So the Undoctor Reset retreat is set for August. We don't have a time yet, but it will be in the third week, likely the third week of August. And that you can find that at undoctorreset.com.
And is that
I
in
have
person
a couple
or that's
websites.
an online type of thing?
That's going to be in person. That's going to be in person in probably a really nice resort area, maybe in Latin America or Mexico. I'm not sure about that. I'm just bringing that's where we are in the swing right now. I have a wonderful team that's helping put that together. Then there's drfred360.com. And then there's welcometohumanity.net. Both of those places the second one is my sort of mothership website. Dr. Fred 360, a little bit slicker, but has everything I've ever done in it. All my podcasts, all my books, all my lead magnets, all my freebies, everything there is in there. And then I do troll around a little bit on social media, unfortunately. So I can be found on Facebook, but I'd rather be found on LinkedIn. And you can find me there at Dr. Fred Moss.
Outstanding. Dr. Fred, I really enjoyed this. I could talk to you, for a lot longer. There's so much to peel back in here, but I will thank you to say, you've even given me, and just before coming on the show and looking into you and the work that you're doing, and certainly in this conversation, you've even given me a little bit of a tool.
Even you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I found out my diagnosis. All this time, I was wondering.
Exactly.
But thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I hope we stay connected.
All right. Me too. I look forward to staying connected with you. Thank you, Doctor.
And to everyone else out there, I really hope you enjoyed this show as much as I did, and hope to see you again on the next episode of Healthcare Algorithm. Until then, be well and be human.
Be human.